Minutes from last meeting.
Yes, we do.
Okay, well, first of all, welcome back, everybody. We've been off for a while, been about 3 months, so it's a good opportunity to get caught up and move the project forward. It is a light agenda, so I'll ask for a mover and a seconder on the agenda. Corey and Matt. All in favor? Good. So, Virginia, I guess you'll take it from here because we're plotting locations to develop the waterfront tour map.
Yes, so I'll give a little bit of an update. So I actually had a chance to talk to Jeanette last week just about this. We did take a number of notes, Paul, as you know, on that windy day, but it was quite windy. It was hard to kind of, everything was blowing all over the place. So I think we'd like to go back out. I know internally we have the technology where we go out with an iPad and then we can kind of mark and take notes at various locations. So I think we'd like to go back out and use that to help with mapping everything out. Once the weather gets a little bit nicer and it's not 100-kilometer-hour winds outside, so that we can really get that plotted out as we continue to develop the narratives for each of the plaques or spots.
Now, Virginia, refresh my memory. The idea here, I know we've had a couple of discussions about the potential route. One of the discussions was along the entire waterfront from essentially the bush plain. And then we talked about wrapping it around, starting at Bondar and coming around Bay. What's the thought right now? What do you see as the road itself?
I think we had only kind of really mapped out locations along the waterfront, kind of from the canal to Clerk Park at this point. Okay. I don't have any updates, and Dawn, you may know where the whole trolley discussion is at, if that's something that's proceeding or if that's kind of on hold at this time.
I haven't had any discussion in which it's like a year and a half on the trolley. Matt, have you heard anything from anybody?
We've got a meeting coming up, which is the first one in a long time. I think it's next week.
Next week, yeah.
Yes, the 17th.
But I'm not part of that, and I'm okay with that.
Oh, okay.
We'll make sure you get the invite done.
Oh, God. And things were going so well. Yes.
Sorry, I thought you were part of that, Dawn. So I don't know if we want to look at kind of a two-phase approach where, we focus kind of on the waterfront right now, get all of those locations done. And then, if and when the trolley's starting to get developed and, that plan kind of gets firmed up, then we look at kind of doing another part of the tour, because I think one of the things that's very nice about, the on this spot application is that, it's easy to add on and build tours. We have 4 currently that are out there through the previous initiative for the downtown heritage walking tour, the mural spots, the tourism spots, and then the kind of a lot of the area that focused around the canal, the Clerg development. So those 4 are already there. We could easily continue to build this out in the future, but I'm not sure what the committee's thoughts are on that.
Don?
Certainly not looking for more work, and I'm not trying to make more work for anybody. But with the redevelopment of Bay Street, that has become a beautiful walking tour. You walk along the waterfront, you go up, you walk along the multi-use path, and now it's a big loop. So you're not just walking down and turning around and walking back. So I'm not suggesting we run out and do anything, but if we have a really cool plaque or hot spot that we want to put up somewhere and it fits up on Bay Street, that might be easy. It's just because it's such it's a really nice spot now. Yeah.
Yeah, originally I thought that the route would take us along the waterfront, and then the discussion at one point came up about, the fact that Bay Street is being redeveloped, and because it wasn't necessarily going to be a chronological type of walk, journey, that it would be a myriad of different topics. That the idea of having that loop, having the route coming down the waterfront and then looping back around Bay Street was the way we were going to go. That's why I originally asked the question today.
Okay, sorry. Obviously, I missed something and I've been out of the loop. I'll try and get back in the loop.
No,
One
but
that goes around Bay Street.
what I'm saying is I agree with you. It makes sense. Bay Street has become an asset. We're trying to not only inform our local public, but it's also has a tourist element to it. And it would make sense that if we could have people walking Bay, that would be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm agreeing with you, Don. Yep.
So as we look through that list, because I know when we did that walkthrough, we were kind of took the list that the committee had kind of brainstormed initially, and
Yeah.
then we kind of walked the waterfront, added a little bit of extra as what we saw, and then we got really cold and we stopped the walk. But I don't know if it'll be worthwhile to kind of take a look at the topics that we have and see what additional topics might make sense to be added along the Bay Street section, because a number of those topics are like, it's Edison Electric and you can see across, or you can see the bridge and what's the story of the bridge. So it's kind of the spots people are seeing as they walk along the waterfront. What stories do we want to tell as people are walking down Bay Street? And I don't know if there's appropriate stories in that list we have now, or if we need to look at what those stories or points of interest or the history we want to share. It's more general as you're walking down Bay.
Well, looking at the list, Virginia, I think there's a couple that could easily be incorporated on Bay Street. Things like the mall, the former rail yards. You could probably, you've got another area, the waterfront development. Probably the Centennial logo, depending on, how we actually wrote this thing. So there's a geology you probably could. So there's a few of them you could probably put on Bay Street. Just a thought, unless somebody has any other thoughts.
Well, and the Centennial logo is actually a perfect, because it is actually on Bay Street. Corner of the library at B&E there, right? So, and there may be some other stories that we do want to start to tell that are a little more general that, aren't overlapping with what's been done on those other tours. So.
Okay. So.
I'm not ignoring you. I've got my other computer up and I'm making notes as we're going.
Sure. I don't know. I keep coming back to this idea that I think we have to decide what exactly the footprint of this walk is going to be, because I think it's going to drive the location of the plaques, the positioning of the plaques, and the messaging that we want to get out there. So I know we've gone around this, pardon the pun, a couple of times, whether it's along the entire length of the waterfront or whether we loop it as Dawn suggested.
I think your suggestion of doing the loop, I think it could work out very nicely if we went, kind of the corner of St. Mary's River Drive by where the little bridge is. You go all the way down the waterfront to the Centennial spot by the library and then to Bay, or vice versa. That could be your loop.
Okay. Any thoughts, guys? Anyone? Going once, going twice?
Well, maybe when we take our walk, we could maybe do a bigger walk. I think you might want to just go and look, but there's the old, is that train? Is it an old train station that's now a bank? Like that's on Bay Street too. So there's definitely some other things there. I guess we just have to, like Virginia said, just see what's in the other tours. And I think the idea was we were trying not to overlap too much.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I think you guys have a really good list already. And I think as you go through the list and say, okay, like where do we want to put this plaque? It may just all be on the waterfront.
Mhm.
Or if you've got a spot left over, you can put it up on Bay Street, but there's nothing magical about it. Like, you can always add stuff later.
Yeah.
True.
So yeah, it may become apparent when you kind of work through this and say, okay, where do we want to put all these plaques? Or have you already done that? Have you already got a spot for each of these?
We
have-
started,
Sorry.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Paul.
No, we like Virginia had said, and Jeanette had mentioned, we did do a preliminary walk. Mother Nature got the best of us that day, so we had to cut it short. But we certainly had some good ideas for where some of these plaques should go. And correct me if I'm wrong, we basically were from the bridge near the canal to the Delta, and then the wind took over and we just, that was enough for that day. So we've started that process. We've started the process, but I do agree we need to get back out there because we have some good information. We have a general idea of what we want to do, but I agree that we need to be out there actually visualizing it by being on the spot, doing it. Corey, you got anything?
No, not really. I agree with
I thought
Don.
I saw your hand go up.
No, I just agree. I agree with Don that, I think the list is a good one. I didn't join you on the walk. My apologies. I didn't get the coffee either, though. I think you forgot to buy it, but that's another story. I think you're right. We got to get back out there. It'll be pretty informative if we did, Paul.
Okay. All right. So I think with that said, Virginia, that would clearly seem like the next step as far as plotting the locations for next steps. Number one under business arising. I think we're gonna have to get back out there then and book something.
Virginia, have you been working with Chris Bean on this?
No, we haven't. We had some general stuff that the trolley maps initially, and then we looked at the other tours. So we haven't actually done kind of a draft plot, which I was just going to ask you if it's okay if we can kind of just do, it doesn't have to be exact, but just approximate locations where some of these topics and.
Well, I just, Chris is really good to work with, and I'm thinking if you guys are going to go for a walk again, maybe we could take Chris with us.
Yep.
And he can just mark up things appropriately, and then if you just give him a day or two, he'll produce a map for you that says, here's what you actually said you were going to do.
No, that would
we
be
can-
really good.
Yeah, and we can look at it and say, okay, well, that makes sense, or what the heck were we thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's an excellent idea.
That would be.
Notice how I volunteered Chris, but I'm sure, Virginia, you've worked with Chris. He likes this kind of stuff, right?
No,
Yeah.
that would be perfect to have
Yeah.
kind of that help because he's got access to the GIS and
Mhm.
a lot more toys than I do from that standpoint.
Okay. So we need to book something. I hear April the 4th is going to be a really nice day.
Happy birthday.
Right.
Early birthday.
Well, so maybe then what we could do is, once we're done here, we can plan. Virginia, perhaps you can, do a survey and see who's available at some point once we know the weather is going to be a little bit better, and we can arrange that.
Yeah, what I'll probably do is I'll probably send out like the doodle poll, but we'll set a date and then a rain date. So we'll kind of already have a rain date pre-planned so that we know what the other alternative is.
Okay, so it'd be really cool if we can get as many people out that day, and that way it's done by consensus and everybody's sort of on board. I realize that most of the people, everybody in the group is fairly amenable to any decision that's made by those present, but it's still nice to have everybody there. So even principals and vice principals.
Is 4:30 a better time slot then? Corey, or 4:15?
You know what? I can do 4. 4 is okay for me.
Yeah, okay.
I work in the elementary division.
All right. So Virginia, we'll leave that with you, and that'll help, move us along that point, plotting the locations. I think we need to nail that down.
All right.
Anything else on that one?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay. Continue research development for each tour spot, signage, assign members to help with development of content.
So there's still, I had sent out that update. So if there's anybody that is interested in some of those topics, I also have a part-time staff person that's helping with a couple of other heritage projects. So I can also have Bradley help do research on some of them as well. I know somebody on the committee has a lot of information about the downtown development, and probably
Furry, how you doing?
I might be able to forward some information for us.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the problem with knowing things sometimes.
Glad to have you on board, Dawn. You're never retiring, by the way.
You know what?
You're
Yeah,
not
I'll be silent on that one. Yeah, I'll be silent.
Yeah. You're never allowed. It's city can't afford it.
You know what I would do? It's just looking at this. I'll do something on the Mariner's Compass. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And the history of the waterfront. I have a long history on the waterfront dating back, I don't know, 100 years or something like that.
That would be
It's
cool.
just a matter of shrinking it down.
You look great, Don. I'd never know you've been on the waterfront for 100 years.
I have, yeah. Usually under the dock, yes. So we have development waterfront. We have history of the waterfront. Is that the same thing?
I think that's where it started to get a little bit hazy when we started to look at, what was on there and what it almost, that's why we were coming up with the idea of going again and plotting some things on a map and being able to then put some bullet points underneath them and sort them all out. Okay, where's the best place to talk about this and this and this? And when we were on our windy waterfront walk that day, we were like, well, maybe we could talk about this under here, or we could talk about that over there. And then it becomes difficult to write something until we know exactly what we want to say at each spot. So I think that's where that idea came back to, just if we can map it out and then we can put some key bullet points under each one, then it'll be easier for people to write.
You know what we could do, Virginia, if you and Chris got together for a couple of minutes, we could just tentatively pick spots for each of these. So when you go out there and it's windy, you can look at this and say, does it make sense for this to be here or not? So you're actually confirming what your plan is, rather than trying to create a plan while walking around.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and then we can just shift them as we want to once we're out there.
Yeah, and some already exist there, right? So it's like, are we just putting the same thing back, only updated, or did we think that there was a better spot for that? So
I like that idea.
Both. I think there was some where we thought it should be shifted a bit, and then some that updated with additional information to be shared.
Yeah.
I have not had the advantage of going through all of the other material that you've provided, Virginia. Like, you had a list of what's on all the other tours out there. I take it this is stuff that's not covered on the other tours. Is that what this is?
For the most part, yeah. We were trying to complement what was out there. There might be a little bit of crossover with a couple of the ones that were on the tourism spot on this spot. But I think when we went out and, we can kind of confirm, there was two components to it. There was, updating the signage that's out there because it's outdated, the logoing and branding are incorrect, and we can add some more information into the actual physical signs. And then also then the on the spot tour, which would have, only a certain number of spots, would complement the other tours that are out there, whereas the signage may overlap because we're going to have more signs potentially than we do spots on the future app.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, and you know, there's likely will be some overlap, and you know, I mean, if a point is made on the waterfront tour that's relevant to the waterfront and it's mentioned in another tour, then that's fine. It's appropriate to have it on our tour. You know, there's certainly going to be a little bit of overlap because not everybody's going to take the other tours.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So that's perfectly fine, I think. Um, Virginia, how much of the, like we've got a pretty good list here. And, you know, you've got my name on a few of them and I'm more than happy to do that. And I'll have some information for next meeting. And I see Jamie assigned to a couple. But how much information do we have for some of these others in the can already? Like it's just a matter of accessing it.
For some of them, we've already got some information on the interpretive panels. It'll just be updating them. So
Okay.
what I can work on doing and have Bradley kind of assist with is taking each one and starting to create a little bit of a data sheet for that particular topic. So
That
we've
would be
got an
great.
outline of, you know, here's all the information we have. It may not be wordsmith the way that we need to, you
Yeah.
know, eventually we'll actually fix the wording, but kind of here's the content we easily have access to. And then we can pare it down, add the photos in, but at least then it'll give like a template for each one that we have so far and where we're at with it. So if, you know, Jamie or anybody has any, I think Jamie, you may have already done a little bit of stuff. I know Jeanette's been working on things. I'll work on pulling that together as well. So we start to build our bundle up of information.
Yeah, and then that'll give us a better idea of where we stand in terms of trying to fill some of the other ones if there's any gaps. You know, because looking at this right now, it looks like we don't have anything, and I know we have info, so maybe that would be a good thing just to start filling in some of this so we have a general idea of what we have and what we need.
Yep, I can have them start to help work on some of that. So, and
Would
then,
it,
pardon me?
well, I was just going to say, would it be possible to have it for our tour, for our next walkabout?
Yeah, I think that's completely doable. At least, you know, for what we've been able to find, we'll pull together the sheet. So, you know, what I'm picturing, just so it's a little bit manageable, is that when Chris and I plot them, you know, we'll have like a section, and then if there's some content, we'll have the next 3 pages as part of that section, and just create a little booklet so that we can really kind of flip through it, write notes, just so that it's not, you know, a huge map that we're trying to carry around as we walk.
Sure. No, that's great. Okay.
Can I ask one silly question? Forgive me, I probably should know the answer to this. But where do you envisage this starting? Where does it start? Is there a starting point necessarily or not necessarily?
Well, that's sort of what we touched on at the beginning a little bit.
Yeah, I think where we've struggled is, I know originally, and I know Paul, that the kind of concept was to try to do it chronologically. But then when we were starting to look at the points, it was really hard to do it in chronological order because, you know, you have certain aspects of, you know, the rapids and from the Wadding perspective there, and then the old stone house, by the time you get, or it would go down that way, it's another couple hundred years. So it's really hard to kind of create that. And then we started to try to think also about, you know, where do people park? Well, people park at the mall, people park at the tent, they park at Clark Park. So there's a lot of different locations that people kind of launch from, which also kind of made it tricky for a starting point. So I think that was one of the struggles that we had when we were trying to figure out if you have a start and an end, or do you just make it more fluid?
Yeah, can I just suggest one thing, because it just came to mind, and you guys may have discussed this at the last meeting, so forgive me again. But you know, where people kind of assemble, and as I see it, people assemble from like our community, often at the Bondar Pavilion. And you know, we have a pretty nice marina down there, and some people may, you know, come upon our community who may not otherwise have before, and it might be a decent thing to start there for the people who live here and for people who might visit. So I'll just put that out there in and around Bondar Marina. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. And one of the things that came out, Virginia, correct me if I'm wrong, but it turns out when you look at this, that a lot of it is more location specific than time specific as I first envisioned it. So in other words, where does Edison Sioux Electric fit into the evolution of Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan and Ontario? It's kind of irrelevant if you're standing right in front of the building from across the river. So that would be the appropriate place to put it, not necessarily on a timeline or as I originally envisioned it. I mean, it would make sense to have it right in front of, if you're standing on the waterfront in Sioux, Ontario, and you look across and it's there, that's the place to have a plaque about information about Edison Sioux.
Yeah, fair enough.
The other thing, I mean, I was just thinking that you could potentially do too to kind of capture that timeline is maybe that's a panel somewhere, right? A little bit of a history timeline becomes its own standalone piece, which,
Yep.
tells that kind of side of the story.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Virginia, anything else on that at this point?
Nope, I think that's kind of it. So we'll work on that. I think the next big piece was the report to council.
Okay.
So I owe council an update report. So, and my goal is to have that by the end of the first quarter, which is March 29th. So just wanted to make sure that, as far as kind of the goals of the committee or kind of the recommendations of the committee, in the analysis, I had a section that talked about two components that the committee would like to move forward with. One being to remove the existing interpretive panels that are on the waterfront and update them using the new branding. Further, the content of the existing panels is under review, and revisions to the panels will incorporate new key concepts. Mm-hmm. As well, additional interpretive panels will also be developed and added along the waterfront. And then, we can talk about that it'll kind of go from, St. Mary's River Drive through to the Centennial located at, Easton Bay and back down. So it'll be a loop. And then the second component was looking at purchasing the app for the On This Spot to create a new tour that would be development to complement the existing tours. Is there anything else that?
Is it worth it at this point to update council on what our next steps are going to be? Mm-hmm. In other words, a planned walkabout to start mapping out exactly where the plaques are going and the content of the plaques at their locations. Maybe even say something about the fact that it's not going to be chronological if you want, and simply say that we're going to try to place these in strategic locations to help explain what it is the visitor is looking at or experiencing.
Yeah.
And then I think at this point, that's lots, because we really haven't gotten much further than that.
And then under financial implications, I did have that, there are no immediate financial implications. Staff will be bringing forward it as a budget request. Going to see if there's potential opportunity to try to do at least the plaques within some operating funds, depending on the cost. So I'm kind of waiting for some firm pricing kind of back from our sign shop just to see exactly what that cost is, because we do have to update them with, current branding as well. So I'm hoping there might be some operational dollars to do so, but sure. We'll see. And then really then it would be the purchase of the On This Spot app, which potentially then would be underneath the $5,000 threshold. So I may also be trying to look for some funding to see if we can move that forward. So so we'll see what we can kind of come up with so that maybe we can try to get a move on this year as opposed to having to bring it to budget. But
fair enough. Okay.
You want to cut some money, Don? I was waiting for Don to say, I have money for you.
Come on, Don, say it.
No.
Say it. Any other comments? Anybody have any other thoughts regarding report to council? Okay. No, I think that's it. I
That's it.
don't see anything else. There's no other issues on the agenda. Any other comments, thoughts, wishes, concerns, desires? No fantasies.
Yes, Paul, I wish you were chairing the other 2 Zoom meetings I had today, because let me tell you, they just dragged on and on.
I don't like dragging meetings.
No, I don't. This is just moving right along. That's great.
Yes. Okay. Well, with that said, that's segue. Oh, that's no other questions. We're going to adjourn, looking for a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Corey and Jeanette, great.
Bye,
See
everybody.
you later,
Thanks, guys.
guys.
Stay safe.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.